Hi class, welcome to this presentation on critical information literacy. In this presentation, you'll be introduced to critical information literacy, including what critical information literacy is and ways to critically assess information. First, some terminology. When we talk about information literacy, that's the ability to identify, find, evaluate, and use information effectively. Information literacy means you're information literate, and you can use information for your daily needs. When we talk about critical information literacy, we're going a bit deeper. And this definition from Emily Drabinski and Eamon Twirl sums it up. Critical information literacy is a theory and practice that considers the socio-political dimensions of information in production of knowledge and critiques the ways in which systems of power shape the creation, distribution, and reception of information. So we're not only looking at the information, we're looking at how that information is produced, how it's disseminated, why do some have access to information and others do not, and all of the economic and social aspects that go into the production and distribution of information. When we critically assess information, there's a few questions we need to ask of ourselves. And these are who, what, when, where, and why. In terms of who, when we get information, we want to know who is the authority behind the information. Who is the author? Who's the researcher? Who's maybe the organization that's creating the document? And who is the target audience? So we want to know who's creating the information, and then who are they creating it for? When we ask what, we're looking at what's the purpose of the information. Is it informative? Is it fact-based? Is it providing an opinion? Is it trying to sell us something? What also considers, is the information well researched? And does the author cite or reference sources? We also have to look at those sources and critically assess them. An author may cite to a source, but it might not be reputable. It might also cite to a source that isn't real. So we have to not only look at what sources they're citing, but do those sources exist? Another thing is, if the authors include hyperlinks, do they work? That's another way to assess information. When we talk about when, we want to know when was the information created and published? And also, can you even determine when the information was created and published? Oftentimes you find things online and they seem on point with what you need, but you can't tell when it was written or when it was published. And that can be very difficult. Sometimes you have to verify that the information is up to date. So this is going back to, you can't just use one source. You need to use multiple sources. You might find information online. You can't verify the date from that specific piece of information, but maybe you can verify that information by looking at other sources. So say you find a blog post about a piece of legislation that's going to the General Assembly in Maryland, and you want to see if that piece of legislation passed. You could then take the information you learned from that blog post and go to the General Assembly's website and see, did that piece of legislation pass? And if it did it become law? So it's asking when things were published and created, and also verifying how that information is up to date. When we talk about where, what is the place of publication? And this goes back to who sometimes, who's publishing it and where are they? Don't depend on internet domains to convey the quality of the information. We sometimes see .org and think it's an organization. It must be reputable. It must be okay. But .org, .com, and .net can be used by anyone for any purpose. You can get a .org and create your own organization and not necessarily have quality information. So be aware of that. And finally, the why. Why is the information even there? Why is the author writing it? Why are they producing it? Is the information mostly opinion, or is it fact-based? Is the information selling something? Think about a law firm website. Many law firms have blogs, which can be very useful. But consider what that law firm is doing with that blog post. More often than not, what they're using a blog post for is to sell their services. So they're going to give you some good information, but they're probably not going to give you all the information, because the point of that blog post is for you to call them and become a new client, or for their existing clients to read that blog post and realize they need some legal advice and they call the law firm. So law firm blogs can be helpful. They can introduce you to topics. They can keep you up to date on legal developments in a particular area, but they might not be giving you all the information because they're selling something. Another thing to consider with the why, is there a political, social, cultural, or other specific viewpoint? And this goes to, is the information biased? Is the author writing from a particular viewpoint? It's important to consider that, especially when you're doing legal research. Now, a little bit about artificial intelligence and critical information literacy. Artificial intelligence, generative AI, all of these catch terms are in the news lately, and they're changing how we are researching and how we're interacting with information. So some considerations as we enter this new world of AI and generative AI. You need to consider the accuracy. Can you trust the information you received from these AI-based tools? Are they correct? You have to double check. So think about ChatGPT. You may have heard of hallucinations, where ChatGPT is just creating cases that don't exist. So you need to take what ChatGPT might give you and verify it. ChatGPT and other chatbots like it were designed to produce content that seems realistic. You trust it. But they produce inaccurate content with that same level of confidence. Their job is to give you answers, even if those answers are wrong. Another thing to consider is content scope. All of these generative AI tools draw from huge inputs of data. You have to question, does the system you're using tell you where the data is coming from? With Bing, it's coming from Google. With ChatGPT, we're not completely clear on where all that data is coming from. Another thing to think about with content scope is the knowledge cutoff date. So how far back does the data go, and also how far forward does the data go? For example, ChatGPT 3.5, which is the free version, has a knowledge cutoff date of January 2022. So it draws from information from January 2022 and back. So any information produced after January of 2022 is not included in the data it's drawing from to answer your questions. And that can be a really important thing in the law, where we need to know, has a case been decided that might impact our issue? And if you're only drawing data from January 2022 and prior, you're missing out on over a year's worth of data. Another thing to be aware of is biases. Technology is not neutral. It may try to look neutral, but it's not. Since machine learning models are trained on real-world data sets, and since the world contains biases, outputs from these models may replicate or even exacerbate biases we see in the world around us. So be aware of that. And then security and privacy. It's safe to assume that in some way or another, any information that you put into AI-based tools is going to be used to further train the models. It's going to be used in some way. It might be seen by a human. So if you choose to use these tools, you'll want to make sure you do not put personal or secure information about you or anyone else into these chatbots. And this includes legal information. And this is a big ethical concern for lawyers with client confidentiality. So you have to be very careful with these tools. Always read the fine print. The FAQs will tell you if humans are going to be looking at these, if humans might be looking at inputs and how the inputs might be used. If they're not telling you that, then you might want to not use that service at all. So that's a bit about artificial intelligence and critical information literacy. And this is an area that is growing and developing and evolving, especially as AI and so many systems are changing quickly. Now a note on critical information literacy in legal research. This quote from Courtney Selby in her forthcoming article in the Northern Illinois Law Review, I think sums it up nicely. While traditional research tools and methods may be appropriate for many legal research problems, they were created to reveal the most likely outcomes and provide pathways for attorneys to replicate successful arguments. There are moments in which justice demands an unorthodox approach to developing and advancing an argument. Contemporary research tools actually function to reduce opportunities to discover obscure ideas, homogenizing research results and diminishing the opportunity to find creative solutions among existing authorities. So our contemporary research tools, all of this wonderful technology that we use to find cases and statutes and regulations is great. It makes research easier, but it's also obscuring research. So just being aware of that can help you counteract that. And one easy, important way to counteract this homogenizing of research and obscuring of ideas is to use multiple services and to use multiple resources. So while you're in law school, it's good to use both Lexis and Westlaw and free resources. It's important to use secondary sources as well as primary sources, because if you want to create novel arguments, if you want to help your client think through unorthodox approaches to developing and advancing arguments, you're going to need to look at multiple resources and look critically at things. Don't trust what Lexis is giving you. Use multiple searches, use multiple sources. Be a critical user of technology. Technology has transformed legal research, and that's good. Transforming legal research has been good. It's made things quicker. That's wonderful. But we have to be aware of the detriments. So that's a brief synopsis of critical legal research. You'll read some more, you'll watch some more videos. Reason why I'm putting this in the first module is because I want you to think critically about information throughout this course. I want you to think about the information you're getting, the information you're not getting as we proceed through this course. So throughout the course, keep those questions in mind, the who, what, when, where, whys. Think about what information you're getting and what information you might not be getting, and how do you figure that out. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you.